going.
He's gonna go.
Stop!
$24,000.
Again!
We have a problem. Somebody didn't vet this guy.
How did this come about for you? It's kind of an obvious question, but it's a great one to start with.
Yeah, so actually Samir and I were in grad school together. I was in the producing program at AFI, and Samir was in the directing program. And we had worked together in school, and Samir had stumbled upon a tape of Press Your Luck in a thrift shop, and just became fascinated by the story and quickly brought it to me because we were looking for something to work on together. And we started developing it pretty much as soon as we graduated from AFI.
So this like videotape with Michael Larson, what was it about that videotape made you go, we've got to make this movie, you got to write it, direct it, and I got to produce it?
I mean, I think the thing that grabbed us both was, you know, seeing that very specific moment in time of the taping, and then going and reading about the life of Michael Larson. But in that taping, you can see that there's kind of so much going on that he's holding back. There's so much work that's gone into getting him into this moment. And we both just became fascinated by this little snapshot in time, essentially.
What kind of research did you and Samir actually do into Michael's backgrounds and his history to flesh it out, to make a story that is makes a protagonist that you don't judge?
Right. It feels like you wonder whether he's actually doing something wrong, whether he's necessarily morally good or bad. And I think those were questions that we were always considering. We really looked at the documentary footage that exists, and then, you know, just reading about his life story and trying to include tidbits of that within this very condensed moment.
So what were some of the producing challenges that you faced in getting the film to green light?
Definitely casting. It was a long and difficult road, but you know, we got the script to Paul actually through a friend of ours, through an associate producer on the film, and he was able to get it to him. And as soon as Paul read it, he was just fascinated with Michael, and you know, really felt that the character resonated for him. He comes from a comedy background, as I'm sure you know.
Yep.
And that really solidified this line that he was walking of, you know, this awkward fish out of water, and then also this man who's potentially there pulling off a heist. He really studied the footage that exists, the presses, and the way he would say stop. He was just quite obsessive about those things, and he really, I think, got into Michael's head and was able to balance, again, when we talk about that weirdness and strangeness and comedy while keeping him a mystery very much.
What were some of the directing challenges that Samir faced? Because you know, this is a film that walks a fine line from start to finish, and it has a lot of heart, a lot of humor, and again, you know, the entire time you're switching your loyalties with him.
Totally. I think, I think just being able to keep the audience along that line, essentially, and also fusing that comedy with this tone of like a thriller, and not allowing the comedy to burst the tension, I think, was a really important thing that Samir was always contending with, right down to the edit, because we always talked about having those moments of comedy that feel like they're so inherent to the situation and the character, but at the same time you don't want it to take away from the thriller aspect and the tension of the film.
So you and Samir have known each other for a while, and developing this. This is, I believe, your second feature as a producer. And it's also, I think, his second feature as a director. What surprised you about Samir as a director?
I think just how comfortable he was with the actors and on set. And I think we had a very condensed timeline, and he is someone who always makes his days, and that's very important to him. And so, he's very, very, very regimented and on top of that, and being able to pull that off and still get the performances, get all the footage and the coverage that we needed, I think was really quite a feat.
What was that timeline that you had to make the film?
Yeah, so it was 24 shooting days.
24 shooting days.
Yes.
That is very impressive. This looks like a studio feature,
Yeah.
just in just how polished it is. One of the things that must have really helped you with that 24 shooting day schedule is your production designer.
Exactly.
And hair, makeup, and wardrobe. Can you talk more about that?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Samir had already worked with that production designer. I don't know if we said this, but we shot entirely in Bogota, Colombia, in a TV studio.
That is interesting. Why Bogota?
So we shot in Bogota because we had done multiple budgets, and that was the one that was the most affordable. We had already great relationships because Samir is Colombian and he has shot there before. You know, it was about finding the crew and the department heads that already knew him, had really close collaborations with him. It really stretched the budget there, and it was great, and we were really able to pull it off on a larger scale, and that was exciting to us. Yeah, hair and makeup was a huge thing because of the wigs. We had a lot of testing for that because Paul had to get into his wig every single day. It was like, you have 10 minutes, and we'd set a timer, and she'd get it done every time. And so the department heads were so crucial in being able to make our days, for sure.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you about the score, because the score is so
Yes.
Early on, I've really caught on to the score, and just watching the credits again,
Yeah.
I was like, I got to get this soundtrack.
Well, it's actually coming out pretty soon.
Oh, perfect.
And so the score is composed by John Carroll Kirby, and the references were, like the 70s scores of like Piccioni and Umiliani, something that felt very like jazzy, romantic, because at the end of the day, it is kind of a crazy love story. Samir worked very closely with John and trying to craft something that felt kind of larger than life, so it really emphasized the emotions of the characters. I think it ended up being really special. We're so happy with it.
How much rehearsal were you all able to do on this?
Rehearsal, we did not have much. We had a little bit of time, maybe a day or two with Paul. Yeah, it was happening essentially while we were shooting.
Yeah, you talk a little about building some of those characters out. Did you do some kind of like a table read with the cast that sort of like tipped you off maybe about doing that?
We did do a read with the cast, but in the end, we kind of kept those roles on the smaller side. It was just the feeling that, because we've got Maisie Williams or Haley Bennett in these roles, they should be larger and more meaty. Yeah. But ultimately, we did what was right for the story.
Yeah, when I was watching it a second time, there's that part towards the end where Paul Walter Hauser, Michael, is talking to the producer, David Strathairn. Everyone thinks I look like that guy. I don't see it.
I do see it.
Yeah, a little bit. Where he's like, what you did was wrong, and you memorized it. And he goes, so? You just sit there as an audience, you just go, okay. I mean, was that like a deliberate moment in the development of the screenplay where you want to sort of turn the tables and everybody watching and make them go, maybe he didn't do anything wrong here, I mean, if he figured out a way to, figure it out, that's actually pretty smart.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that was a big moment. It was always about how, Michael was able to be in the gray zone of, is this wrong or is it not actually wrong? And he really walked the line. And he did end up walking away with the money because ultimately he didn't really do anything wrong. They only had 5 patterns, and he just realized that and exploited it.
Is Michael still with us?
He's not. He died in the Everglades running away from the FBI.
Oh, whoa, when was that?
So he, after Press Your Luck, he took his winnings and exchanged them for $1 bills, which he then pasted up all over his house because he was trying to, he was following this competition that basically you had to have a serial code on the bill. So he exchanged everything for $1 bills, and actually he went out one day and it was all stolen.
Okay, seems to me like there's a whole other movie.
There's so many movies to his life. He also created a fake lottery. He was really quite a schemer. So this is just one fragment of a really crazy character.
Was there a chance that you might actually make this into a bigger story? I mean, because it is very contained and very satisfying as is.
Yeah.
But my goodness.
We wanted to. We really did. And it started quite big and we just couldn't put it together with the financing. And as soon as we started to pitch it as this contained thriller, it just got a lot of traction and we were able to do it for the money that we had. And so we really just worked on telling the best story that we could in that condensed terrain.
Well, thank you so much for being here at the Academy for this very special screening of The Luckiest Man in America. And make sure you spread the word. Thank you all for being here tonight and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Scott.